until they force you to pick a side, which is it's much better to get in front of a candidate running for office before he or she is actually in office. And a great example of that is the card check issue. One of the hot fights back in 2008, as Democrats were taking control of all levers of power in this country, or at least the legislative and executive branches, was that Democrats were going to bend the big labor and ramrod a card check through. What another industry, the retail industry, did really smartly was back before the 2008 election, back in March, just like we are now, went and said, okay, we're gonna get out and educate people in these swing states. We're going to get them on our side. We're going to get them on the record. We're going to videotape when they say, I don't think that we should get rid of secret elections in the workplace. And they were set. They came to Washington, and they were in our corner. And I think we have an opportunity to do that. It's unclear who's going to win the Wisconsin Senate race, for example. We got a bunch of good schools there. Tammy Baldwin's ahead by a point or two. It's unclear who the Republican's going to be, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a really close race. And we should be talking to all those people now. We should be getting them on the record as pro-private sector colleges. And that, to me, is the single most important thing we should be doing in elections. Now, if one of them, we'll adjust. If one of them comes out and says, I'm going to support that Durbin legislation, or I'm going to support, changing 90-10, I think, then you make the calculation. We're going to go in for the other guy, and we're going to try to win. But until we know where people stand, we should be talking to everybody.
I agree. What Sarah did not tell you was that she was one of the people that ran the card check campaign, and she's totally right about that. I would say, if I could try to be somewhat charitably, that while members of Congress are not always great leaders, they are terrific at seeing where lines form and going and getting in front of the line. And so I think there's nothing that politicians are more interested in than themselves and keeping their jobs. And so I think to be successful, part of what Sarah said on card check is important. You've got to have a very strong substantive narrative about what our position is. But the best way to shape where that line is formed that member wants to get in front of is their self-interest, and that's in the states. It's taking a long review. It is them, in the case of Wisconsin that Sarah mentioned, is taking the assets on the ground in Wisconsin and leveraging those to talk about in the state how it's in the self-interest of that senator or that candidate in terms of what's going on in that state, to support the positions that we're in under the narrative that we're talking about. The last thing is, in that I think you can't stress enough, as Sarah said earlier, how important it is to not think tactically, not think short-term, but to think strategically and long-term. And all senators are not created equal. And if you look at leadership projections, you look at committees that you care about, you look at members who have interest in our issues, and you look at members who are respected by their colleagues, they're not all created equal, and that we should be on the front end of figuring out who our targets are and engaging them in a long-term strategic way so that as we move down the road, we're driving the Baylor narrative and we're pushing in the states the self-interest of these guys. We have influential champions making their case on the Hill.
Great. Sarah and Doug, you're so fortunate.